Welcome to the Museum of Aquarium and Pet History 1-year anniversary video. Today we are at the Graduate. This was a nightclub for 45 years and we purchased it to morph it into the Museum of Aquarium and Pet History, which is going to be the left half, and the right half will be actually a zoo and aquarium. And it's going to be really cool because the zoo actually will have breeding turtles in it. We'll have a nursery room with baby turtles. It will have killifish, it'll have prehistoric fish. We'll have all the fish that you really don't see at public aquariums very often. So that will be in the right side, which is going to be the zoo side. And the left side will have some rotating exhibits because we have 4 storage units. And so we'll rotate different exhibits every year. We'll have, of course, there's going to be antique aquariums, terrariums, squirrel cages, bird cages, dog and cat items. We'll have things from famous actresses, Lauren Bacall. We have something from Queen Victoria. We'll have another thing in there from Mary Pickford. We have one of her fish tanks. We have everything. So hopefully we'll be open within, I'm hoping 3 years. It could be 4, but between 3 and 4 years. Your donations really help. I'll be honest, they help. So anytime you feel like donating, we are a nonprofit. Also, if you donate goods, we can give you a nonprofit receipt. You can write off up to $5,000 a year without an appraisal. Other than that, you have to have an appraisal, and we can't give that to you. So an appraisal you'd have to get yourself from a private place that does appraisals if it's over that amount. But up to $5,000 a year, we can give you a receipt for that. So we have a few people that have been gracious donators. Some of them have done the $25 a month, and we've gotten it regularly every month, and it is really appreciated. And if you want to know on public aquariums, I just want to give you a little interesting fact. The one that's in Atlanta, Georgia, the seed money was Home Depot. The one that's in Monterey, the Monterey Bay Aquarium, the seed money was Hewlett-Packard. So we've got companies like, in this case, ZooMed will be the seed money, but of course we don't want to carry all the weight. So we're looking to you guys to help us as well. And if it's not with money, if it's with product donations, that's great. We appreciate it. So other than that, I do want to tell you about the Graduate a little bit. This is an original tile for the Graduate. It was made by Duncan Ceramics in Fresno in 1975. And because we love history, we didn't take it down and throw it away. So we're preserving the original motif, the original sign for the Graduate on the building. Another thing that happened is when we bought the building, a lot of people contacted us and said, I met my wife there. Can we have a piece of the dance floor? And we said, sure. So we started shipping out pieces of the dance floor to people that actually had marriage events happen at the Graduate. So that's just because that's how we are, or that's how we roll, I should say. So without further ado, that's the beginning. Now I'm going to take you to the restoration studios for the museum and the library for the museum. Okay, we are at the Museum of Aquarium and Pet History, and this is the restoration studio. This is where we actually restore old aquariums that come in and their glass is broken, they're rusted, they're damaged, that kind of thing. So you're going to get a peek at something that we don't show anybody, but well, we're going to show it to you guys. So it's restoration studio. Let's go. Okay, so inside this little studio, we have our master restorers, Leo and Antonio. Say hello. Hello. Hi. And how many years experience do you have with aquariums, putting them together and stuff? About 12, 15 years. 12 to 15 years? Yeah. Okay, all right. And how many years have you been restoring antique aquariums for us? About 7 years? 8 years. 7, 8 years just restoring antique aquariums. So let's show you a few things. For instance, this tank here, which is a really beautiful tank that came in with the stand, but the glass was completely broken. So they had to remove the glass from a cast iron aquarium, which is not easy. And then the bottom is iron. So we decided to paint the bottom and then put the glass back in. We used Starfire glass, which is low iron glass. And then we re-siliconed it inside here. And some of you may wonder, you know, how come the bottom doesn't have glass? Well, they didn't come with glass on the bottom. Normally the bottoms were painted, and that wasn't really an issue. And what we do is we repaint the bottoms with a 2-part epoxy paint, which is right over here. Okay, made by Pentair. So you can go on Pentair's website, which is Aquatic Ecosystems. And this is the activator. It's a 2-part epoxy paint that's made for public aquariums for basically metal tanks. It's made to paint on metal. And it's wonderful because when you add water to it after it's dried and cured, it's not a problem. And we use this on a lot of the metal tanks. Here's another. This is a really rare, I call this the swimming dolphin tank, because the dolphin is actually swimming and that's the dolphin's tail. That's a candle holder, believe it or not. That's where they would have put candles. And this is a really interesting tank. This tank had broken glass everywhere, so it was probably a lot of work to take it apart. A lot of work, right? So we had to take this one apart, put it back together again. We use clear silicone on this one. And anyways, Leo's pretty amazing on that one. Is this missing still?
Yeah, it's right here.
Oh, okay, so we have to weld this back on. So this probably snapped off. So I'll have to take this to our metalsmith, our welder, and he'll actually weld this back on. Now let me show you another tank over here. This had a broken panel, so Leo had to take that out. And a lot of times when there's an overhang, it's not easy. And then it has a metal bottom. So I had him just replace the one broken panel. I had him repaint the metal bottom with the 2-part epoxy paint. But what I want to tell you is this is a Fisk Aquarium. I have the stand for this over at another location. And this is the 10-gallon starter tank from the Victorian era. So this is about 1875 is when this tank was made. It's 10 gallons, and this would be the first tank that you would buy for your parlor that you'd put either goldfish or native fish in. Now remember, in the United States, when they started keeping fish in about the 1850s, we had mostly goldfish and native fish, whereas England had a lot of tide pool fish because it was a really big deal for the English to go to the seaside. You know, they wanted to soak up those beautiful sun rays because it's overcast there a lot. And they would collect tide pool animals, and they would have a little local tide pool tank. So they were much more into marine tide pool tanks than we were in the US. We were into native fish and goldfish. Tropical fish really didn't start until about 1910. They got their stride about 1915 to 1920, and then they just took off and exploded. And I really would have to say that tropical fish probably started in Germany and were imported into the US from Germany about 1910. So that's that one. One thing that's really interesting, do we have a piece of bulb edge glass?
Yeah. Yeah.
So you could tell, number one, on Starfire or low iron glass, it's not green. It's more of a clear color. And that's one of the ways that you can tell. New glass has got a very dark green tint to it. Now, bulb edge glass, they used to make float glass, and they would pour it, and it would make this bulb edge, this rounded edge. And they would literally throw it away, put it back into the kiln and burn it or melt it down to make more glass, until someone came along and said, hey, let's use that for shelves. So all the old department stores back in the 1920s, you would see shelves with this bulb edge glass because it wouldn't cut anybody. You know, of course, they would have something to protect the edges, but the front would be this bulb edge. So the Art Deco aquarium manufacturers, starting in the 20s, especially Jewel Aquarium, decided to use this. They would not have a top rim. The top rim would be missing. They would just have a corner uprights, but no rim here, and they would have this bulb edge glass. They would stick up like that. And it was really interesting. So I found a glass guy that had like 4 cases of it, wooden cases, shelving, basically bulb edge shelving, and we bought it so we can restore some of the Art Deco aquariums. So that's bulb edge glass, and we've got a bunch of it here. What else do we have? We've got frames from metal frame aquariums. Those are probably original frames that were never made into tanks. We've got a few of those. We've got, of course, some big metal frame tanks that we're restoring right here, which is what I do when we have this original sealant is we try to leave it. We leave everything as original as possible. And then what Leo does is he'll clean it and then he'll take black silicone and push it into it and rub it with his finger. So basically you've got a new silicone job on the inside, and then you've got black silicone pushed into the groove on the outside. So that's what we do with that. This is a really rare tank from the 1875 or so. We call it the Civil War tank. And this is actually one that we made. We actually cast a reproduction from the original. We have 2 originals in the museum. This is one of the reproductions, and was a lot of work actually casting this and making all the parts. And then a lot of times if you put glass on the inside, you actually have to step it up on the edges so it's glass sealing to glass. This is a Mott Fountain Aquarium, a JL Mott. Mott and Fisk were big competitors during the Victorian era. The reason that it's shrink wrapped at the top is because Leo finished it. Whenever he finishes a tank, he shrink wraps it so we protect it from dust and everything else. And this tank came in and all the glass was broken and it was rusted on the bottom. So we didn't touch the paint. The paint is the patina, and you really don't want to touch it. If you've got original paint on this thing, you really ruin the value by touching the paint. Just leave the paint alone. But on the inside where you're going to have fish or you're going to put a dry tank setup, I always paint the bottom with the 2-part epoxy. So the rusted bottom is now clean. And then Leo replaces the glass with a low iron glass, which is period correct. And then voila, we've got a beautiful display tank for the museum, which looks original. You know, if we sanded all that down and God forbid powder coat it, which I would never do, or paint it, which I would never do, it just wouldn't look old. So we want it to stay old. And the nice thing about this Mott tank is it's got the original nameplate right here. And that really adds the value to the aquarium when you've got the original nameplate that goes with it. And one more tank, this wasn't resealed, but this was polished by Leo. And this is called the Fish Queen. And it is a water nymph that's standing on top of a dolphin head. The original was made by Jewel Aquarium in the 1920s, and it's very rare. There's only one example known. And then a friend of mine who had a frozen food company in Chicago, he made about 10 of these. And they went for not very much money when he made them. And now they go for a lot of money because there's none around and people see them and just go crazy over them. But this, it's dry tank setup because we had it in the museum, but it was really faded and I wanted to polish up the uprights to show how beautiful it is. So that is the restoration studio. I want to thank you guys. We're going to go to the museum library. All right, so this is the prototype for our library. We'll probably eventually make it into a larger space, but right now this is all the space we have. This is probably about 600 square feet, maybe a little more. We're going to call it the Jara Simpson Library in honor of Jara Simpson. He was an aquarist that decided to collect every Aquarium Society publication he can get his hands on. And he spent literally a good part of his life collecting aquarium newsletters and bulletins all the way from like the 1930s on up to before he passed. So to find those that didn't go to the trash can is almost unheard of. And if you look at this wall, these are all Aquarium Society publications with the exception of some magazines on that one bottom shelf, all Aquarium Society. And it's incredible. You've got the Swordtail from the Schuylkill Valley Aquarium Society. You've got the Wet Pet Journal. You've got the Oklahoma Aquarist. You've got the Valley Stream from Edgewood Aquarium Society. That really is a great newsletter. I love that one. You've got the Wet Pet Journal again over here, Wet Pet Gazette. Some of these are Australian. Some of these are Canadian. Some of these are from Europe. It's just amazing that he saved these, and we have boxes and boxes of more of these. So again, we'll put these in order by state, and then after state, we'll do it by city, and then by the name of the club. So that's how we're going to alphabetize them. I know some of you are going to say, well, Gary, are you going to ever digitize them? Well, you could see how much work it would be to try to digitize all these. So I don't know. I can't answer that question. But this is the Aquarium Society part. Again, it's going to be the Jara Simpson Library. Now let me show you some other things. Okay, so this wall here is all international. We have, it's German, it's Holland, it's Belgium, It's all international, foreign language, so not necessarily Australian. Now we do have one thing here. We have a full set of the aquarium by Ennis, full set of tropical fish hobbyists, and we have actually several sets of the aquarium and tropical fish hobbyist. But when you see, like for instance, let me see here. I will show you some of the older ones. So bladder for aquarium und terrarium, German, and bladder means leaves. So it means that basically it was in like a series, but this was a magazine, and both for aquarium and terrarium keeping. You can see it's got a turtle article in here. It's got some looks native fish in there. I like how they do the printing kind of in a script. Here's the name. This is May or maybe March from 1919. Here's betta fish. So we go back all the way to the late 1800s with bladder. We've got some seriously old ones. Here's some Danios. Pretty crazy. Just to show you some of the things that we have. Oh, here is 1905. Let's see if we can get it here. So bladder for aquarium und terrarium kind, 1905. Ooh, there's a nice terrarium. Possibly a paludarium, but I don't think so because there's no water feature down here, so that's a terrarium. Think about that, that's over 100 years old. Goldfish. A Lacerda. So that's a Italian Lacerda probably, Morales. Pretty crazy. There's a grotto. A lot of aquariums in the old Victorian times, when they started the first aquariums, they were in grottos, which means you go underground and you look at them, because what they wanted to do is have the feature of you're going under a lake, or you're going under the ocean and you're looking at a side profile of a lake or an ocean, you know. So it was kind of the effect is what they were trying to go for when they did the grotto thing, which was pretty neat. And they still have that. They have it at the Brighton Aquarium, still has a grotto, and I think there's a couple more. Oh look, they've got a monitor lizard. That's a Bosque monitor from West Africa. So pretty neat. So this is the international section, and I'm pretty happy with it. We go back to the late 1800s, which is pretty amazing. This is some regular tropical fish books, probably 1970s, 1980s, 1990s, fairly recent. We're going to eventually get these into subject matter. Here we have some of the Ennis books, and we have probably 3 or 4 times as many Ennis books. Multiple copies of exotic aquarium fishes, book 1, book 2, book 3, all that kind of thing, plus the more modern editions that they came out with. Over here we have recent reptile magazines and recent fish magazines and recent pet industry magazines. So this is all recent stuff, both pet industry, aquarium, and reptile, plus there's some bird stuff as well down there, bird cage magazines. So you've got here Pet Stock magazine with a dog on the cover. Dog's name is Bess, 2-year-old winner, 1908. And yes, eventually these will be in plastic sleeves and better protected than just laying here, but you know, it is what it is. So over here we have a Bunt Barshi Bulletin. That's the American Cichlid Association. We have every issue published, including the rare first issues. We don't have all the rare first issues, but you could see there's some of the mimeographed ones right here. This is number 2 right there. There you go. They were like handwritten, mimeographed, typed and then mimeographed, sent out to all the people that wanted to start a cichlid club back in the 60s. Then we have the last series of the aquarium. Actually, the very last one is the one put out by Mattel, which is right there. That's the Mattel. They put out 1 issue and that's it. Then said, we don't want to be in the magazine business. And then you've got the one before that, the series before that, that's post Ennis. And then you've got Ennis series. And all the way down here, you have Ennis Aquarium. And over here, we have the American Killifish Association. We have everything published by the American Killifish Association. You name it, we have it. Again, Al Clay, he was instrumental. He was one of the founders, I believe, of the American Killifish Association. And everywhere you look, you've got Clay's name. I know it looks like Clee, but it's pronounced Clay. We have also the auxiliary publications from the AKA, American Killifish Association. Here's like Tropical Fish Hobbyist, one of the early issues, when it was a small little digest format. So we have, dog magazines. These are from England. We have Anchor. One of the wealthiest aquarium societies is the San Francisco Aquarium Society, or it was the wealthiest, because they controlled the brine shrimp. And they actually sold for many years the live brine shrimp across the United States. And they published Aquarium Journal, which was really considered a hobbyist magazine. So you had the Aquarium, which was by Ennis, but then you had Aquarium Journal from the San Francisco Aquarium Society. Once the Aquarium Journal went away, because they could no longer afford to print it because they got rid of the brine shrimp, they came out with Anchor, which was really in its own right a great publication. I mean, I really enjoyed this. I subscribed to it. I read it when I was a kid. And we have every issue of Anchor. We have really old cat magazines dating back to the late 1800s. These are more recent. This is 1953. But we've got some seriously old cat magazines. We've got pet shop magazines, or Pet Stock Journal, 1919. Pets and Animals, 1902. So we've got some seriously old Pet Stock Journal again. That is volume 1, 1917. And some of these came from Augie Roth's collection, who was a publisher of pet magazines. And I don't think you could duplicate it. I really don't. And Augie Roth, of course, was the one that started Aquatic Life. Didn't start Aquatic Life, but he ran it for the longest period of time. I mean, there was only like 3 or 4 issues from the initial people that started it, and then Augie had it for 50, 60 years, right up to almost the same time as Ennis. He went right up to the 1960s. And he was a one-man show. He basically, he printed the whole thing himself on what someone said, a printing press that belonged in the Smithsonian, which was probably very true. It was probably a hand typeset. I mean, you could look at it. It's very primitive, and some of the type and some of it's faded. But just the fact that he did this was just amazing. That is it. That is the library, and that's the Restoration Studios. And I just want to thank everybody for giving me 1 year of such great enjoyment doing these videos. I mean, honestly, I love this. And I love pets. It's been my life. And I hope that this museum will continue for years and years to come, long after I'm gone. So if you've got anything laying around in your garage you want to get rid of, send it to us. It'll go into the museum. And it'll definitely be there for people to see for years to come. All right. Thank you. And till next time.